How's it going?
What's up? Good evening. Back again.
Happy Friday the 13th.
Yeah, right? Is this our first Friday the 13th show?
No, because remember we were trying to get like some old Friday the 13th actors on.
Yes, that's right. From the series.
I thought I was
Yeah.
going to have a special show. Shoot.
There you go.
Yeah.
And with
Yeah.
a big 6-0 today, 60th episode. So there you go.
Yeah, you got that going for you. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, well, we appreciate you coming on. It's you were going to be outside in the nice weather. You said you got rained out there. I saw you doing the rainbow, right?
It just started storming and then saw a rainbow. And of course, my daughter was obsessed with it. And we had to take a little picture. So made the best out of it.
Nice.
It did ruin my cigar time, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got to talk about cigars a little bit. What kind of cigars do you smoke?
Anything from Cuba is my top preference.
There you go.
I like Padrones.
Yeah, me too. Right?
Ancient Age.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ancient Age. That's bourbon. What's that? Ancient Room. Is that what it's called?
Macaroons? What?
Ancient something. It won Cigar of the Year like 2 years ago when I first started getting into cigars.
Yeah,
So
I'm not sure.
I bought a box of them and they were nice.
Yeah, I just got these Hammer and Sickles. I got a smoking deal, pun intended, on these because probably because their logo. People think they're Russian, but they're not. They're Dominican, right? So they probably weren't selling well. So I got a buy one box, get two others for free. So I'm like set for at least a week and a half, maybe. So yeah,
I'm just I guess I'm not enough of a cigar snob. I like any. I'm not very picky with cigars, so I shouldn't say I like any. I've had some that taste like tar in my mouth, but
really? Were you in the islands? Were they hand rolling for you in the islands, sir, at that point?
maybe it wasn't a cigar. Yeah, I don't know.
That's how I got introduced to them. I was spoiled early on. I was in Key West, and there was a guy on the beach hand rolling the cigars, and he gave me one. And I just sat there on the balcony looking out at the ocean, and it was amazing. And I've been chasing that cigar smoke ever since. So can't quite match the Key West cigar.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's really. I don't know if you have them in West Virginia, but we have those damn black flies out here, right? And they're like gnats, and they bite you and shit. And they literally swarm you, go in your mouth and your nose and your ears, and they're brutal. So you almost have to smoke when you're out farming just to keep them away. You can do bug nets and stuff. But they still got all of your arms and stuff. So it's really, really handy when you're working out in the fields for sure. So it's almost a necessity.
Speaking of farming, when I was reading The Exorcist House, it reminded me of your house, the old farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere, pretty much.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Joel has some strange rooms in his house too. I don't think he has any hidden wells in the basement, but
I've been hidden well in the kitchen. I've been hidden well in the kitchen.
True. Oh yeah, you get the freaking floor that opens up to the well. You get the gateway to hell right in your kitchen.
Yes, I do. Yeah, and I have a cemetery next. So what more could you want, right? So
hey, that's perfect. That's all the inspiration you need right there.
Yeah, I'm gonna make this like an author's retreat some year. I think is my goal. Is like put up some little cabins around, and you guys can come up and have at it, man. Just do whatever you want. So
Right.
a lot of creepy, weird stuff out here. I think I told this story on the show before, but we first moved out here. My wife had like some type of reading by some seer in Mexico, and he was saying that he's like, "Yeah, I sent you somewhere else." She's like, "Well, he just bought this old 1850s colonial out in New Hampshire," and he's like, "I sensed 32 spirits on your property, so I'm going to go ahead and clear those for you." So he cleared off He's like, "Some of them might even be Native American." That's the feeling I'm getting. So was he full of shit? Who knows? But it's interesting.
Probably.
So. But I've had no spooky ghost experience or anything out here. So just the wilderness and weird stuff that comes up behind me during the show. So
I don't know. Your attic and basement are like the definition of like haunted house like scenes.
Basement, dude. Yeah, that's like dragons live down there. It's rough.
Oh man,
farm basements. You can't go wrong with creepy farm basements.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's something buried down there for sure. We dropped.
Is it dirt floor down there? I don't even remember if it was. Yeah, that's what I figured. The other house. Yeah.
There you go.
Well, anyways, I finished this book today. I was in a mad dash. Nick said he wouldn't come off. I didn't finish it before the show. So
I've been banging about this thing for like 3 weeks, Nick. So
when I saw the cover and I read the synopsis, I'm like, this is gonna be it. Right? It's gonna be awesome. I just knew it. And then and Crystal Lake puts out awesome books usually, anyway. So I felt like the combination of everything was lining up perfectly. And honestly, like it checked all the boxes. Like it did everything I wanted it to. Like when stuff was happening, I'm like, yes. I don't want to spoil the book for people, obviously, but it builds in the tension in that climax, right? It just, when I write, like I just want that ending to just be like over the top excitement and like terror, right? So it definitely brought that in at the end there. So that's about as good as I can say without spoiling. But yeah, you're welcome. The other thing too, I think I mentioned to you. So the cover artist did my cover too. So Matt Seth Barnes did this cover. You can't see it with the stupid light, but yeah, this cover is so awesome. When Matt posted this on social media, I'm like, man, that's so freaking awesome.
Right? It got real for me when I saw that cover for the first time.
Yeah. I'm the Crystal Lake. I'm assuming they went and got the cover, right? Like you didn't. Yeah. So
Joe had asked me what was in my mind for the cover, and I rattled off every image and theme and symbol that I could think of from the book, and he was like, "All right, let's just funnel your ideas into something a little specific, and then we'll pick out an artist based off of that." And I said, "Well, it takes place in Appalachia. It's called the Exorcist House. I kind of want a creepy background with a house." And he said, "I got just the guy for you." And then, it wasn't long after that I got that cover sent to me in my email. And I got so excited when I saw it. It's always so nerve-wracking opening up that image for the first time. You're like, please don't suck. Please don't suck. And I was blown away. I'm thrilled with that cover.
Yeah, Matt does really good with like the house covers like that too, like where like, and Joel and I have talked about this with comics, like we just love the red cover, like the red and black cover. It just pops, so and it did its job, right? Like I saw the name of the book in the cover, and then obviously that made me look, and then I read the synopsis, and I'm like, all right, that sounds great. So that's what you want, honestly. I mean, anyone that says a book doesn't sell the cover is not right. It absolutely does. So
right.
But yeah, so I definitely want to talk a little bit about the book. Obviously that's what we had you on. But did you have to do a lot of research when it comes to exorcisms and whatnot? What's your background on that side of it, your knowledge around that before going into it?
Well, I had standard horror movie knowledge, just the stuff that I'd seen in every exorcism movie, and who knows what was accurate and what wasn't, but I had a general idea because there were certain things that happened in almost all of these exorcism movies, but I did want to get it right. So I did research the rites of exorcism. I looked into the courses that they offer at the Vatican on exorcism. And I kind of did my research as I got to that part. I didn't have a detailed outline going into this one, and I kind of let the characters take it where they wanted. And when I got to a part where I didn't really feel like I had all the information, and I had a character who was supposed to have all of the information, I said, well, I need to pause and do some research. But it wasn't as in depth or as intense as I thought it was going to be, because the scene didn't call for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely had to double check a few things.
Yeah, that's always my fear of trying to write that type of horror, is the lack of knowledge and how much research I would have to do and getting stuff wrong. I mean, I wouldn't, I'm ignorant to that stuff. So when I read it, I wouldn't notice anything anyways, not being accurate, but it seemed like it flowed perfect. So, but to the point where I actually submitted a short story for a religious horror anthology where the protagonist didn't know anything about religion, because I was like, oh, I can do this. This guy doesn't know anything about religion. He's getting sucked into this cult, and so that made it much easier. But to write with,
I think I saw that open call for that.
Yeah, through Darklit. Yeah.
It definitely piqued my interest. I'm so busy trying to wrap up this dissertation, it's killing me not to be able to get my ideas out. Having to devote my time to nonfiction writing, but it'll be worth it. But yeah, hopefully your story gets picked up.
I hope so. They picked up my first short story. That's the first thing I ever got published, was through Dark Lit. So it'd be cool. And it's actually a tie into my second novel. So it's like a side character from my next novel. But yeah, so did I read correctly? This one took you a couple years to work on. Is that correct when you're writing this book? Or
it took a couple years to come out, because I mean, this was so much easier to write than my first novel. I mean, it just kind of came out of me over a summer, and I started sending it off to different agents and indie publishers. And Joe at Crystal Lake got back to me, and he said, "I'm very interested in this. Here's the catch. We have so many books and projects backed up right now that it'll probably be early 2022 when it comes out." And this was, I think, late 2020. So, I just finished the manuscript and I was excited for people to read it. And then I was like, well, that's a long time to wait. But it was sort of a blessing in disguise, because with COVID still running rampant at that time, I couldn't have done any promotion. I couldn't have gone and done any book signings or anything like that. So, I'm so glad that I agreed to wait and go with Crystal Lake. They've been awesome.
Yeah, I said when Joe posted something about all the books that he had put out, I'm like, man, you put out awesome stuff. Like, I don't think I've read a book through Crystal Lake that I didn't like. So he picks well. So and that's when Joe and I talk about the comic side of it. So far we've only published our own books that we've written and drawn and all that, but we do want to publish other writers and artists. And we've talked about how we want that image, where someone sees our Livid logo and they're like, that's a good book. I don't even have to know what it's about, and that's how I feel about Crystal Lake. So, yeah, man, I don't know. Waiting that long, I would go freaking crazy. Like
well, I cranked out a ton of short stories because I had to get that fix of having people read my work. And yeah, I wrote more short stories during that period than I ever have in my life. And I think all of them but one have gotten picked up. And I've had a pretty good run with my short stories. I like writing novels better.
Yeah.
Or I like it more. And I can only really do that over the summer because I'm a school teacher. I have my summers off. And my routine is get up, exercise, sit down at 10 a.m. and don't get up until I've written at least 1,000 words. And if I do that for 90 days, I pretty much have a first draft of the manuscript. Yeah. When I did my first novel, I literally Googled how long should a horror novel be, and it said around 90,000, 80,000 words. So I said, okay, if I just do 1,000 words a day for 3 months, that'd give me a full length novel. And that's kind of my routine.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, it's good when you can break it down that way in your head, right? I mean, I'm sure there's some days where you didn't hit it, some days where you went over that, right? But like having that goal in mind, like that's great. And yeah, I mean, to me, like the perfect length of a horror novel is right around the length of Exorcist House, and my book is like 20 pages short. Mine's a little bit shorter because I set out to write a novella, and because I didn't know if I had a novel in me yet. I hadn't done anything besides short stories and comic books, and all of a sudden it was like, oh shit, I'm past the novella length now. So yeah, but so yeah, I think 350 pages tops, like for a horror novel, if you can keep the pace going, which again, I'll keep patting your back here, but the pacing in the book is just nonstop. It's there's no drag. Yeah, that was
huge. Something that I really wanted to focus on, and I cut out a lot. I wanted it to be all killer, no filler, and you know, I had to have it be. My goal was if someone read a chapter, they had to read the next one because I didn't want any lulls in it, and I would write it. I think it took me about 2 days to write each chapter, and I would send a chapter off to my early readers and get feedback on it. And getting the feedback from them during the process was sort of invigorating. And then there's always the ups and downs of it, where there's some days where I'd write something and be like, man, that was the worst. It derailed the story. How am I going to write myself out of this hole? And you know, I read Stephen King's On Writing probably years ago, but I've read it several times. And one of the things that I retained from that was when you write yourself in a plot hole, like he did with The Stand, and spoiler alert for The Stand. But when they all get to Boulder, he didn't know what to do after that, so he just blew them all up.
So I remember that. Yeah, I've read On Writing and listened to it on audio like 5 times. So yeah, yeah. So I mean, I already had your book on my list anyways, and then I saw the review from Nerdy Narrative, I think is her handle. She's got the YouTube channel. And she just like drooled over this book. And
poured me away.
Yeah, well, she sold me on. I mean, she sold me to the point where I took it from the bottom of my to be read list and just threw it right to the top. So I feel bad because I have like 4 books I'm reading right now that I'm supposed to give advanced reviews for, or like blurbs or whatever, and they just got thrown to the side this week because I just wanted to fly through this thing. So that's praise there, too. So, but her review is awesome, and she was spot on. I couldn't agree more with the stuff she was saying there. So,
even in reading through the reviews and posts and comments and the horror book group on Facebook, it's just, I've just never experienced anything like it, where I set out to do something and then people are picking up on it. Like, I was like, wow, they're literally getting exactly what I was intending. This is awesome. And especially when people comment on the structure of it, and then they say, okay, I see why he did that. That's my biggest compliment that I've gotten so far, because that's been a critique. And then when people kind of finish the novel, they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I know exactly what comment. It was Justin Booty. I don't know how you pronounce his last name, but he said that as far as like going back and forth with different characters. So I agree with him 100%. And I was telling you, like, that group, that Books of Horror group is because I knew how good the book was, and there's 20-something thousand people in that group. Like, all it's going to take is a handful of people posting about it, and it's gonna go viral. So we've seen it in that group over the last couple years. Before you were in it there, so Stolen Tongues from Felix Blackwell freaking blew up. And he wrote a post in that group last year about how he's thanking everyone in the group because he got 500 Amazon reviews. He hit 500 on Stolen Tongues, and he's like, this is all because of you guys. Like, I had maybe 100 in here. And then I was like, man, 500, where is it at now? So I looked it up. It's been 9 months, something like that, since he posted that. And he's got 2,500 freaking reviews on Amazon for that book now. And he told me flat out, because Joel and I talk to him all the time. He's like, about 10% of people that buy the book review it. So I'm like, are you freaking telling me you sold 20-something thousand copies of this book right now? And then Daniel Volpe, like with Left to You, that book blew up, end of last year, early this year, in that group, and he would say the same thing. So really, man, like, I'm telling you that you're going to get a ton of sales just from that group alone. It's going to be awesome. So
I hope so. I've enjoyed this process so far. I remember getting the first review back and being very nervous, and it was an honest review. There were a couple critiques, but it was 99% positive. And if people don't like it, I haven't had anyone tell me that yet. But
yeah, I mean, obviously, it's not gonna. Everyone's not gonna like everything. I
right.
get that. But I don't know what they're. I really don't know what they would complain about unless they were like super religious and they had something against the religious aspect of it. Something like that. But like story wise, like it cranks. So.
Well, that's funny you brought that up, because I talked with a pastor about some of the biblical references, because I'm by no means an expert on that. And I read Milton's Paradise Lost before writing this, and I said, this isn't quite religious enough for religious people to fully embrace it, because I don't want to go into it, but it doesn't attribute all the power to religion.
Yeah.
It kind of takes a little bit of it away, but and it may be a little bit too religious for non-religious people. So that was my fear, is that it would offend the religious and offend the non-religious, but
might be good though, right? Might be good to
word of mouth.
that shit's real though, man. Like possession and stuff, that's totally real. My father was a minister for 63 years, so and he spent some time in Jamaica and saw people like, possessed with like voodoo and shit like that, and just out of their mind. And he used to play a small trumpet called a cornet, and some lady grabbed it one time and smashed it on the ground, stepped on it, crushed the bell, and had to send it over to Europe to be rebuilt and have the bell retooled. And I still have it, and it still has the fix mark on it. So it's kind of cool that a possessed lady actually damaged that thing. So it's got a cool backstory to it. It's awesome.
That's pretty wild.
Do your students that you teach know that you write too on the side, or they have no clue, or what's that relationship like?
Yeah, I have high schoolers, honors kids, general ed kids, and when they find out I'm a writer and then the stuff I write, they're pretty intrigued by it. They always ask if I'll give them a copy, and I'm like, guys, I'd get fired if I gave you a copy of my book. But if you were to stumble upon my website and find it on your own time, then that's not on me. So, but yeah, they're intrigued by it. And the few kids that actually are naturally gifted at English and like writing, they'll come up to me after class and talk about it, and that's really cool, because I was that kid in high school.
Yeah.
That's because Jonathan Jans is a teacher too, and he's an awesome horror author. I'm pretty sure that he said that was a pen name though, so maybe that's how he gets away with it with his students. But I always wondered that. Joel and I work in finance, so if anyone found out, what we do, it's like whatever, but we don't have students, to worry about. But
I was worried about that when my first book came out, because my first book is dark, and it was intentionally so. And I mean, it's like Pet Cemetery dark, and I was worried that my principal and superintendent would read it, or parents would read it and be like, I don't want this sick guy teaching my kid.
Right.
But that didn't happen. I mean, if I heard quite a few people were repulsed by a few scenes, but they said it was well written and it was cool that I got something published. So they were more impressed by that. Or at least that outweighed the shocking scenes in the book. The fact that they had an English teacher who had gotten something published, that I think that kind of bought me some leeway.
Yeah, you got proof that focusing in English class, can lead to something, right? So
yeah. Now I have the poster of my first book on the wall behind me in my classroom.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm gonna read that, by the way. I was checking out the synopsis for that before before the show, because I was enjoying this book so much. I'm like, man, what else? I knew it wasn't your first novel because it said second, so I'm like, what was the first one about? So definitely have to check that out. But and now that you say it's dark as hell, I'm all about it. So,
Let's put that on the title, just the blurb, dark as hell. Like,
yeah.
You can tell it's the first novel. You can tell it was published by a very small indie publisher. But I have a soft spot for it. There's some, when I reread it, I had to reread it because the publisher, Ellington Ashton, they didn't really survive COVID. So they shut down and all rights reverted back to me, and it was going to disappear from Amazon. So I reformatted it, re-edited it, and put it back on Amazon, and it's up there now as a second edition, just because I didn't want it to disappear.
Yeah.
But there are parts that make me cringe a little bit, but there are parts that overall I'm proud of. Happy I got some of those demons out.
There you go. Well, when we say you could tell it's a first novel, like, I mean, it's everyone, or at least I think anyone that's ever going to get better always looks at it like that, right? Like they always look back at the last one and it's like, I would have done this differently or that differently. Joe
Hill had an interview, and he said they were talking about his success with, I think, was it American Ghosts that was the first thing that he wrote that blew up?
21st Century Ghosts, yeah, the short story collection, right? Yeah.
And he said, yeah, I had to write a couple shitty novels before I could get this one right. So I think I'm in my shitty novel period. So this next one will be even better.
I was going to ask you what challenges, like a writer like yourself might face going from like your first album to your second album. I know from like a musician standpoint, I played drums for a lot of years in a band. Like you kind of hit it, get known with like a certain, sound with your first album, then you got to kind of follow that up. I wanted to see if that was something that kind of resonated with the author side of things too, or what challenges are you feeling kind of going into your second novel versus like the first one that just kind of weigh on you, maybe something that writers may face that kind of making that transition to the next one?
Of course, in the back of my mind, I'm a little worried that, what if this next one isn't as well received as The Exorcist House? But honestly, I don't think about that too much. Really, if I think about something and it gives me the creeps, that's when I get excited, and that's when I start to build something, because I love horror that scares, that genuinely creeps me out. That's my favorite kind of horror to read. There's nothing at all that's wrong. Nothing wrong with fun, lighthearted, maybe not as dark horror. I love all kinds of it, but the ones that resonated with me are the ones that really like chilled me to the bone after I read it. And that's what I want to do for others. Give people that feeling. So if I might be on the treadmill and I might be thinking of something in just a certain scene, or, there's a scene early on in The Exorcist House that involves a grate, like a vent and a face. And I was on my treadmill and I looked up at this little grate up there near the ceiling, and I was just staring into the dark crevices, and I was like, what if there's something there? And I just got this whole creeped feeling, and it's stuff like that, little scenes like that really inspire me more than actively trying to write something different. Of course, I don't want to write another exorcism book, but I'm not setting out to make something completely different. I guess I'm just not that worried about it.
No, I think, if you get the pros down, right, like that's what's key. And then, like, I mean, you understand telling a story, right? So, if you don't like it, you're going to make sure you fix what you don't like, right? So it's, Yeah. Well, you just reminded me, like there was I mean, there's a lot of scenes in the book that are definitely like that, where it's not necessarily just a jump scare type thing, but it's like genuinely like unsettling, right? Like I'm not spoiling anything by saying this, but there was a scene where um, you wrote about a presence on the other side of the basement door that I forget which character it was at that point could just sense that there was a presence, like a figure on the other side of that door, just like waiting. Basically, you don't see it, right? Like it's not like you're writing this descriptive like monster. It's just like there's something there, like just stuff like that. That's genuinely creepy to a lot of people, and uh, that's definitely the type of horror that I go for. That's why I was so in love with the book. But yeah, I think you posted something about how you were reading Best Friend's Exorcism, right?
Yeah.
Like
So
Grady
maybe that,
Hendrix is a great author, but his horror is definitely more lighthearted to me. Like it's more of a comedy type, lighthearted horror for more of a casual horror fan, I feel like, and that's why he's so popular.
right.
But he doesn't spook me out at all. None of his books really have done that to me. But yeah, so I'm
The,
curious, did you end up finishing
the,
that book or?
well, about halfway into it. Yeah, I've been
Yeah.
reading a little bit before I go to sleep every night. But the last book that really creeped me out like that was Paul Tremblay's A Head Full of Ghosts.
Yeah.
And just because I think he had the protagonist to be a young girl and looking up at her older sister slowly changing, whether she's mentally going through something or it's demonic. We don't know because we're looking through a child's eyes, but the scenes where the two sisters would be alone in the bedroom and the little one would look up at the older one, and the older one would just, there'd be something just off about her.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, that's just so creepy. And he's not even doing anything. He's just saying there's something not right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm enjoying my best friend's exorcism. It's entertaining. I haven't gotten the creeped out vibe, but I didn't anticipate that based on, I mean, the
Yeah.
cover. You can tell you're going to have a fun time just by the cover alone.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like I really enjoy his books. Like I'll read them in between, like deep, like dark books, just to like get lighthearted a bit. Because when I read Best Friend's Exorcism, like I enjoyed the story. I had a great time reading, and there is some creepy scenes, but it's not anything that's like overly scary. And I met him, Grady Hendrix, at I went to AuthorCon, and he's just a funny dude. Like he's very unique. He's wearing his like funky like suit jackets, but he had this big presentation, Paperbacks from Hell, which he has a book out about, just about 80s. Joel, you would get a kick out of this, like 80s horror novels, like kind of like the movies that you watch on Amazon,
Watch
shitty
trash on Amazon.
yeah.
Prime.
So he has a book on it, but he also does this presentation at cons, where he just goes down the list of like 80s horror novels and how bad they were and like how over the top they were. Like, some of the covers he explaining, some of the, he was reading excerpts from like some of the books, and like I had tears in my eyes. It was hilarious. But
yeah, I think he was on, it was either the King Cast or Post Mortem with Mick Garris, but I heard him talking about how important it was for him as an author to do those types of presentations. Like he wanted to do these entertaining readings, and more power to him. I think it's awesome. It's something completely out of my comfort zone. I could
yeah.
I could never do it. I don't have the energy for it, but yeah, the guy knows how to be a showman.
That's it. He like he's got the timing down, like that he'll pause for the crowd to laugh, and then he'll just pick and then just makes him laugh even more, like just the timing of his sentences, and like he has a slideshow going on while he's talking, and like it just times perfectly. He'll pause a sentence, the next slide will come up, and the crowd just starts cracking up. It was awesome. But yeah, I'm with you. Like I don't mind talking in front of people, but to do something, like I had to do 2 best man speeches, and like I felt like I felt like my body was shaking while I was doing them,
Yeah.
but I'm not looking forward to trying to do live readings either at some of these cons. That's like a big thing that I didn't know about till AuthorCon. Like basically, if you have a table set up, they're probably going to come ask you if you want to do a live reading, you know. And but
yeah, when I had Anathema get picked up in 2020, but it was picked up in November 2019 and released the end of February 2020, right when COVID hit. So I had an appearance. I was going to be a speaker at the West Virginia Book Festival. I was going to be a vendor there. I had several libraries that I was going to go do readings at. I had book signings at different stores around West Virginia. I mean, I had this whole thing lined out, and it just all derailed. But yeah, I was nervous about it. I'm not so much now. I don't know. Maybe teaching has kind of taken away my stakes a bit, but yeah, I can definitely relate to that. But what would intimidate me would be trying to put as much effort as he does into those presentations, like all the homework he has to do to make those effective. It's one thing to be witty and engaging, but like I said, he's a showman. He knows what he's doing.
To set the slides up in order and then have what you're going to say around each slide timed perfectly. Like he doesn't even have to look, clicks his freaking remote, it's going on behind him. Like he's just got it down. So but yeah, so are you, I mean, you're not too far. Are you going to try to go to AuthorCon next year, or?
We'll see. I'm in the process right now of moving to South Carolina.
Oh, so you'd be a little further. But
yeah, we've got some big changes lined up. I'll be finished with my doctorate in August. We'll be moving at the end of the month, and starting a new job, teaching in South Carolina, and hopefully starting novel number 3 pretty soon. So
nice.
If I can get the time, I would love to do some cons. I have never been to one. Wouldn't know the first thing about it, but I definitely want to get involved with it.
We had our first comic con that we did last August, was it, Joel? Or September? I don't know. We did our first con in
October, man. It was late in the year.
Oh, was it? I mean, that was a blast. I mean, we had fun. Networked more than anything. If you go into it like planning to network as much as make money, I mean, we didn't make much money that con. We only had one book out at that point. So, but we met a lot of people. And when I went to AuthorCon, I didn't even have a table because I didn't know if my first book would be ready yet. When you had to book them way ahead of time, and I'm like, it should be ready, but I don't know if I'm gonna have to edit a bunch of crap, and so I drove from New Hampshire down to Virginia. It was supposed to be 10 hours. It took me 13 times, or 13 times. I saw fun times, 13 hours. But it was worth every second of it. I just was there as like a guest, or like walking around buying books. But like I met so many authors, and I got a table for next year. Like I'm excited. So yeah.
I'd be afraid I'd go broke.
Oh man, my wife, when she saw, I told my wife I gave out all my arcs of my book, and she was all excited. And then I'm like, yeah, but I bought like double what I brought down. So and there was people worse than me. There's I don't recall her name off the top of my head. She's in the Books of Horror group, but she bought a couple suitcases full of books. Like it was insane. Like she was walking around with her little wheelie, suitcase, and just adding the books to her. She had Jeff Strand sign like 20 books. It was hilarious. She just bought all his books and he's sitting there signing them all. But yeah, I know that's the thing. It's like, I don't know if I'll be out of this freaking hole that I've put myself in with books from this con by this time next year. So we'll see. I think I bought like 30 books. And it's one of those things where I want to read as many books as I can, but I also want to write. Every time I pick up a book to read, I'm like looking at my laptop, like you could be writing right now. But
there are some books that I'll pick up and read, and it'll make me completely lose confidence as a writer and not want to write anything. Really, anything by Cormac McCarthy.
oh yeah,
I was writing I submitted a horror western, which was a first for me, to the the Silver Shamrock open call, and I don't know if you've seen all the drama that unfolded.
I was at AuthorCon when that broke down. Like a lot of the authors there had books through them, and it was all while we were at AuthorCon, so it was a nightmare. But
oh man,
yeah,
but yeah, I had a story for Midnight on a Stagecoach, and I was so proud of this one. It was long, and I just, like the Exorcist House, I trimmed out so much, and I edited it and kept tweaking it, and I was so proud of it. And I thought, I was like, there's no way they're going to turn this down. And then I get on Twitter, and the whole publishing house imploded. But
overnight, yeah.
I saw where someone's doing basically the same kind of project.
There's 3 out right now. Well, so Kenneth Kane was basically the guy running stuff for them. He didn't own Silver Shamrock, but he did a lot of their stuff. I think he was going to edit that for them, and he's basically picked that up for a different publisher. So there's an open call for that. And then Death Head Press has another one at the same time, same deadline. It's 2 days away. So I don't know if you've submitted to either of them yet, but
I submitted to Kane's, but
okay.
Not the other one.
Well, Death Head had a 6,000 word limit, and Kane's had a 5,000. So like when I submitted it, I'm like, shit, I gotta cut. Mine was like 5,998 words. Like I hit it just under 6,000, and then I ended up cutting it down to 5,200. And Kenneth was like, "Hey, I understand." He posted this. It's like, I understand there's a Death Head, or there's another one with a higher limit. People are asking that are submitting to both of us if that's okay. And he said, "We'll look at them. Try to trim as much out as you can. If it's a little over, that's fine." And I got it down to 5,200, and then I was like, "Oh shit! Like this is better." So then I was like, "I want to submit this to Death Head." It's a little tighter now. But we'll see. But that'd be cool to share the pages with you there. If we both got into Kenneth's there,
that'd be awesome.
Yeah. But so that's cool. The horror Western thing's like really just taken off. It's huge now. I never knew how much I liked it. I read one of those the Death Head, like the splatter Westerns. And actually we had Kenzie Jennings on. I read one of hers, and I'm like, this is freaking cool. And then I read another one, and I'm like, oh, apparently I like horror Westerns. My dad.
I don't think I've read one. Honestly.
Oh man, they're great.
I'll have to check those out. But when I sat down to write mine, that one I had to do a ton of research. I knew nothing about. I knew a little bit about the Old West, again, from movies, but who knows what all is historically accurate. So I really had to look at like maps from that era to see what the different territories were called and what the river would be at this area. So yeah, that one probably took most of my research. But as I was writing it, I felt like I was trying to sound like a Western too much. Yeah. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go downstairs and read a little bit of No Country for Old Men and see how it's done. And Cormac's he's definitely my favorite non-horror author. And I sat there and I read the opening monologue by the sheriff, and just the flow of the voice, the syntax, the structure, the simple sentences, and then the longer ones. And he writes poetry. I don't know how the dude does it, but after reading that, I just immediately ran back upstairs, got my laptop, and I had that in my head, that tone whatever it was that I absorbed from reading that, and that the rest of the story just came out so much easier. But
Nice.
yeah, I hope this one gets picked up. I think people get a kick out of it.
Yeah, well, the good thing about Kenneth's open call is he said there's no reserved spots, you know. So Death Head Press is like there's 2 open spots, and it's like the rest of them are filled by like, you know, a lot of big authors too. So
Yeah,
you know, so I know a million people are submitting to that one, but this other one, you know, Kenneth's it pays pretty solid for a short story too.
yeah.
So yeah, that'd be cool. But we go off on tangents here in case you haven't noticed. We're talking about
You're on theme. You're on theme, John. You're on track, buddy. It's okay.
well, we're
I
talking
was
about books the whole time, so that's good.
Yeah, right. I was gonna ask Nick. Do you always see yourself wanting to work with horror, or would you ever go into another genre? And if so, would you go to like a pen name, or what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you see yourself maybe some year like trying something out too, or do you kind of want to stay in that genre?
Definitely would not go with a pen name, though I see why people do it. But
Yeah.
A lot of my short stories aren't horror. I've had quite a few get picked up by literary magazines, and those are my more, you know, dark thematic stories of you know, guilt and addiction. And you know, this is on my website, so it's no secret. But you know, I had, from my early teens until I was about 25, you know, I was full blown drug addiction, alcoholism, completely out there. And toward the end there, my mom was just expecting the phone call that I was going to die.
Wow.
Yeah, and so she gave me the ultimatum. She said, "You can either get your ass in rehab today, or you can get the hell out of my house and die on the street."
Sure.
And didn't want to do that, so I
Right.
went to treatment when I was 25. That was about 10 years ago, and you know, still trugging along, doing the damn thing. But
Yeah.
I love writing about characters characters in recovery. And that was a big part of why I wrote my first novel, which is a horror novel. I didn't feel like movies, TV shows were getting it quite right with how they depict people in recovery. It's always like the same drama. Like, are they or are they not going to relapse when this bad thing happens?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's not recovery. That's the opposite of recovery.
Right.
It's, you know, I'm not white knuckling it through the day, trying not to get high or drink. You know, it's just a non-issue for me. So I wanted to write a character who's in recovery and literally experiences absolute evil and doesn't succumb to relapse. But a lot of my short literary works that have been picked up deal with stuff like that. Like the first thing I ever got published was about a guy in his mid-20s who hired a hitman to kill him in 5 years if he couldn't clean himself up from drugs and alcohol. Because that was a thought that I had at one point in my life. I said, that's the only way I'm going to get sober is if someone's going to kill me.
Ultimatum. Yeah.
But yeah, I have another short story about a hunting accident and a guy that experienced his alcoholism. Yeah, they're all linked on my website. But yeah, as far as writing in different genres, I'm all about it. And you know, if I get the rights to these stories back, I would definitely throw together an anthology that wouldn't necessarily have to be all horror, because I think thematically a lot of these would connect and it would flow well. So yeah, I'm not opposed to other genres at all.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's like a man versus self, right? That could be a horror too, right? That's for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, yeah, I definitely got to check out that first novel. It really sounds interesting. So, So I'll probably, I don't know. My wife might kill me if I buy another book right now, so I might have to wait on that. But like
It's the Durkin Memorial Library. That's what it's for, right?
you know, I'm like, when one arrives, I'm like, Danielle, I swear I pre-ordered that months ago before I ordered. I did not pre-order Exorcist House months ago. I'm like, shit, like I can't wait. I gotta buy that. You know, so
The other things you're into, right? I mean, it's not that bad. You're buying books, right? I mean, everyone's got to have a vice, right?
that's all I spend money on. Honestly, I buy a lot of books or stuff that helps me with my writing. Like I don't buy anything else like, ever. Like
it's books, horror memorabilia, and cigars for me.
yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I just bought my first few shirts from Fright Rags, and I'm like, my wife was like, "You right?" Well, I was wearing I have a Carrie shirt. It has like a skeleton, like holding like bloody flowers or something. And my wife's like, "Are you gonna wear that in front of our kids?" And I'm like, "Probably."
I tell my wife if she owns a championship racehorse, she's got to let him run every now and again. You know, that's what you got to do, hon. So
I have a white tee with Leatherface full blown on the front, holding the chainsaw up like that with blood and gore spinning off of it. So I rock that proudly around my 5-year-old daughter. I don't care.
There you go. The
kids wear my horror shirts. It's so funny. I love it. So they're totally into it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I told him. Like my 8-year-old son, he was obsessed with horror. He's kind of trailed off on that a bit. He's obsessed with police officers. He's just going through his phases, you know. But he was so into horror. I was reading Goosebumps to him before I probably should have, and that's what, like, Joel and I, when we started writing, you know, doing the comic. I got the idea from talking to him. I just wanted to write something creepy that he could read, you know. And so, and I mean, I wouldn't let my son do this, but like I watched Nightmare on Elm Street when I was in, I think, 1st or 2nd grade. Like my dad didn't care, you know, and I had nightmares about Freddy, but I also loved horror. I loved being scared.
I think what did it for me was walking down the aisles at Blockbuster and seeing all those covers of the VHSs, and I was just like, this is amazing. I don't know what this is. And I remember I would always ask my dad if I could take one. He would say no. And then one time he wasn't looking, and I grabbed the case for Jason Takes Manhattan. I forget what Friday the 13th.
Part 6, I think.
And so I took that and I went and put it behind a comedy, and then acted like I pulled that from the comedy. And he rented it for me, and then walked in halfway into when I was watching it, and Jason hadn't even made it to Manhattan yet. He kicked my door in and hit the eject button.
That's awesome.
Yeah, my stepson he's 12 going on 13, and last October I went down and got all my DVDs and just dumped them out in front of him. I said, your education begins right now. We're watching Halloween, and we're watching a new horror movie every night for October.
Oh man, I can't wait till my son's old enough to watch that stuff with me. Like
we watched The Thing together, and
that's my favorite movie. Yeah, I love The Thing.
I've been super into like very bad 80s, early 90s horror, like really bad shit.
Yeah,
like,
you have.
Never heard of.
No,
I don't know why.
Same here. I mean, when you've seen everything, you'll have to grow up. And
he'll text like the movie that he watched, and like he's like, "This is what I got into last night." I'm like, "God, man, like, watching that crap."
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like Asylum movies, is it?
No. It's like not B horror movies, like D horror movies. Like it's just like corny, over the top shit. Like he got me to watch Lamageddon, which we actually had the writer of that on our show because it became such a running joke on our show. And I'm glad I watched it. It was hilarious, but it's a killer llama from outer space, you know. He hit play on that. I wouldn't hit play if he didn't push me to.
Another episode, John. You brought Lamageddon up for yet another. It's made it back into the conversation. So thank you, John, for bringing that back into the
probably at least a third of our shows that's been brought up. So
I know. Yeah.
There's a scene where the llama comes into a party and pushes a freaking, was it a toaster or a radio?
A radio. They're all in the hot tub. So there's like 12 of them at a hot tub party, and they're drunk and high or whatever. And we don't even know how he gets in the room. All of a sudden, it just cuts to a scene where the llama's in the room with the hot tub, and he like hoofs the radio into the hot tub and kills 12 of them.
They all get electrocuted. I had tears in my eyes. I'm like, all right, that was pretty damn funny, actually.
I'm sold. I'm looking up Armageddon right now.
Oh, it's bad. It's like the movies that I made in high school bad, but it's very funny because it's so bad. And when I told the writer, when I asked him to come on, and he agreed, and then he's like, I'm just curious, like, why did you guys watch my movie? Basically.
I mean, how can you turn that down?
There you go.
Yeah, that's a good romp. It's a good romp. It's fun. Yeah. That's like that kind of trash, like the Noah shark. What was the other one? Avalanche sharks. The shark
Killer
things.
Sofa.
Yeah, Killer Sofa is another good one, right? Like all that just trash. Like I'm surprised the actors actually even show up, man. Like they're talking to their agent. I'm like, bro, like really, this is all you can get me right now? Like, okay.
Did you watch Velocipaster?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Of course I did.
Sure, that was a good one. Sharks of the corn, like instead of children of the corn, sharks in cornfields. Like that. How is that even logical? But, okay. Oh man. Anyways, damn, like I brought that stupid movie up again. Yeah. Why are we talking about this?
We're talking about shitty 80s movies in like 90s.
Oh, because you said what you were watching. Nick and I were talking about good horror movies like The Thing, and then you started talking about those
horror movies, right? So,
yeah,
right. That's my angle.
Yeah. Well, so I was gonna ask because Nick and I are pretty much the same age. We're like, I think I'm a year older than you, but so you were you a Goosebumps kid? I'm assuming. I mean, you're right around the same age, so.
I had every original Goosebump, and one of my friends had a daughter who was maybe like 5 or 6 and super smart and reading Goosebumps, and my stepson did not want to read them, could care less. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna bestow this treasure onto this little girl, and I gave her my whole collection of original Goosebumps, and I'm sure she appreciated it, but I'd be lying if I didn't say I don't regret it. So
I also had all of the originals. They got ruined in water damage in my parents' storage room. I was like so upset about that, and because every time what's that?
I was going to say I saw R.L. Stein released a new book with all the covers. It's just
we had Tim Jacobus on our show. He did all the covers. We had him on a couple months ago. I reached out to him, and when he agreed to come on, I'm like, hell yes. It was right around when that book came out because I wanted to talk about that, and he's a really cool guy. But he was telling us about the covers and like some fun facts too that like we didn't even know. Like the only cover he didn't initially do was issued or the second book. I think it came from the basement as number 2.
That's probably one of the most iconic ones.
Well, the cover you recognize was probably his because Scholastic, they're the publisher. Yes. They went back to him. They said the original cover didn't fit all of the others. Like the theme was just different. Like it didn't look the same. So they had him redo cover 2. But he's like, that was the only one I initially never got, picked up for originally. So
I would say what influenced me or traumatized me more than Goosebumps, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Yeah, there you go.
Those drawings. Oh
yeah. Oh, those stories are definitely creepy.
Yeah,
I actually kind of dug the movie that came out a few years ago. I mean, it was kind of fun.
I love Troll Hunter, so when I found out that guy was directing it and Guillermo del Toro produced it, I was like, we're in good hands, and the visuals were amazing in that.
Yeah, movie. Yeah. Well, same like that. My son, I actually let him watch the Goosebumps movies, and obviously I grew up watching the Goosebumps TV show. I had all the VHS of each of the I had the Haunted Mask movie. And so that had a soft spot for me. But when they had the movies coming out, I'm like, this is kind of stupid. Like, it's not this. It's just like about the books,
Yeah.
Like R.L. Stein's a character in the movie, and then I watched the movies, and I'm like, this is actually kind of cool. But my son wanted me to write a book with Slappy as the villain, and I'm like, I'd get sued, buddy.
Yeah.
I could write it for you. Can't sell it. But yeah, so I had all the original Goosebumps, and then I read it in 8th grade, and that's when I'm like, okay, well, this, who reads a 1,000-page book in 8th grade? I guess I did, but it was that's where I'm like,
it?
Yeah, I reread it like 5 years ago, right before the remake of the movie came out. I wanted to reread it.
See, I read it later in life. I was just too intimidated by the size, but I've heard that people who read it at the age of the kids in the book and then reread it as the age of the grown-ups, it's a completely different experience.
It really is.
I'm envious.
Yeah.
Well, because the kid scenes in the book as a kid, like freaking, are terrifying. Just even that initial scene with Georgie and the freaking water, the boat, whatever. Like that scene. And then when I reread that as a parent, I was like, oh my God. Like as a kid, it just is terrifying. His arm getting, ripped off or whatever. And then when I read it as a grown up, I'm like, oh, I can't imagine that as a parent. But
I don't know if I ever told you the story, John, but my 7-year-old daughter knows all about it because of your son. Will told her about it. So we have like a drain. We have a drain off of one of our fields. And she's it's like, yeah, John's son was telling me that there's clowns that live in the drain.
oh my God.
So I had to give her the whole backstory of it and like all this stuff. And then, like, of course, my other daughter comes over, like, what are you guys talking about? So now they all think there's clowns in the drains and stuff. So.
I promise my son has not watched it. I don't know. I got to check his YouTube history, apparently.
Yes, up by Will, so so it's funny, though. It's hilarious.
Oh, my God. I got to tell my wife that. She's going to be like, John, I told you to check what he's watching on YouTube. I'm like, every time I go in, he's watching people playing Minecraft. Like,
so, awesome. It's all good.
Yeah.
No big deal. My 7-year-old, she's got the mindset of like a 17-year-old. She can hang. She's like, this is just fake, so it's just silly. I'm like, yeah, it's just fake stuff. She gets it, so she's right there. Yeah.
My daughter, she's the same way. I have a ton of horror movie memorabilia in my basement. Well, it's all in my storage unit right now because we're getting ready to move. But all of my scary little Funko Pops and It dolls, she loves Pennywise. She laughs at all the little Chucky dolls and Annabelle and all the stuff that I have. And
nice.
All the neighborhood kids that come over and hang out with my stepson are all creeped out by the basement. I'm like, I'm the creepy guy in the neighborhood with the scary basement that everyone is dared to go into.
You got the Conjuring basement, yeah. All the haunted artifacts, yeah. Well, I have because of my son's obsession with Halloween and scary stuff. He went through this like 2-year phase where all the gifts he wanted for like Christmas or his birthday were like those stupid like 6-foot-tall animatronics. So like I was out on Christmas 2 years ago setting up a zombie animatronic in our driveway, and like he had a smoke machine that he wanted because he was like so into all that stuff. Like my neighbors were driving by with a zombie and a smoke machine set up on Christmas morning. I'm like, hi, glowing red eyes, and they just see my son like sitting there, like setting it all up.
Someone down the street here, they got like a 12-foot skeleton up year round, John.
Yeah. So. Oh, it's up year round. Yeah. He wanted one. It was at Home Depot for like $300. He's like, can we get that? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I don't even want, like, I'm staring at a stupid skeleton pirate right now behind this laptop. Like, it's just sitting in the basement with me. So, but yeah, so I don't have too much memorabilia besides those. I do have a couple Funko Pops. I have a Freddy and a Walking Dead zombie on my desk behind the banner here, but that's about it there. My wife kind of put a stop to my collecting when we got a house. So
when I took over the basement, that was when I went full on out, and then it was COVID during that time, so we were getting all this stimulus money. So I just splurged on keeping cigars and horror movie memorabilia.
Man,
that's awesome.
Good for you. What plans do you have, Nick, to convert some of your books to audio for us artist guys, because like I like audiobooks because I'm usually drawing, obviously, right? So my visual is occupied, but I can listen to books. Do you have plans to convert some to audio too?
Yeah, Anathema, my first one, the audiobook's still on there. I don't have the rights to that. I guess the audio rights are all tied up differently than publishing rights, but yeah, it's out there.
Oh, good. Okay.
As far as an audiobook for the Exorcist House, I have no idea. I haven't talked to Joe about that. I would not be opposed to doing it myself. I would love if someone else did it, but yeah, I know a ton of people that's how they consume their literature, and I do it a lot as well. I love Audible.
Yeah.
So,
big fan. Would you read your own book, or would you hire it out? Because I like when authors read their own stuff. I think it's more authentic, personally, but that's just me. But I know your opinion on it.
So, yeah, Anathema was hired out. I have a relative who just does not like to read, but they love to listen to stuff.
Right.
So I kept talking up this short story that I wrote called Sally Under the Bed that was published in Sinister Smile Press's recent anthology. I said, so I was like, well, I could just, record myself and, let you listen to it. So I went out and bought a good microphone, hooked it up, read the story. And as I was reading it, like at first I was intimidated. I was like, well, what if I just, stumble over words and, do I have to cut that out? How much work is this actually going to be? But once I started reading it, and then, I found myself just naturally doing different voices and inflections for different characters. Like I wasn't self-conscious about it at all. And yeah, it came out really well. I sent it to him and he loved it. So yeah, I would love to do that. But
that's awesome.
Again, when I sat there and listened to a professional do Anathema, I laid there on my couch with my AirPods in, listening to it, and I was like, damn, this is good. Like, this doesn't sound like my writing.
Yeah.
This is elevated. So
yeah, I'm a huge Ray Bradbury fan. So if he had read Martian, if he read Martian Chronicles, and he had done that audiobook, man, I'd lose my shit. I'd be like, oh my God, to hear Ray Bradbury go through Martian Chronicles and blow my mind off. So.
If I can ever write anything as haunting as what Ray Bradbury writes,
it's so good.
Yeah.
I appreciate him every day. I'm definitely getting "There's Something Wicked This Way Comes" tattooed on this somewhere. I don't know if you all like Hostel, the movie, but I've got my Elite Hunting Bloodhound tattoo right there. So
there you go. That's awesome. Yeah.
So I think you're not wearing any T-shirts in the summer days at school then, showing that bad boy off, or do you not?
No one knows what it is, and I knew that when I was getting it. I was like, there may be one person I'll pass, another horror movie nerd who loves Hostel, who will see that and be like, hey, sweet. I knew none of my students would know what it was.
Right. Oh, Hostel was awesome. I haven't seen that in years, actually. I should go back and watch that. There was some freaking disturbing stuff in that movie. So
it gets bashed, and I don't know why I related to it so much, and it had such an impact on me. But this may ruin my credibility with a lot of people, but it's in my top 5 horror movies. So I love that movie.
Yeah. No, I mean, Eli Roth, I think he's hit or miss for a lot of people with all his stuff, but I like his style. So, there's a lot of people that like the Rob Zombie style of horror movies. I'm not really a fan of his movie. I mean, actually, I shouldn't say that. I don't like the Halloween movies he did too much, just because I love the originals so much. But he has his own unique style. It's like Eli Roth does, and any of those horror directors. But yeah, I just actually last night was watching the new Firestarter movie with my wife, and I wanted to punch the TV. Like, I hated it.
Really?
I was excited because I love the book, and I actually like the original movie, and I think it gets bashed a lot, but I actually think they did pretty well, with it back in its day. And the new movie, I didn't have high hopes for, but I knew John Carpenter did the score for it, and I'm like, this is going to be pretty cool, at least just for that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm exaggerating. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but I definitely was annoyed at a lot of the stuff they changed. And you know, I don't know if you ever read that book, but they changed quite a bit.
Yeah, I have a long list of King novels that I have just, for whatever reason, put off. I don't know if I think it's because I know the story so well already.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's a dumb reason not to read it. But yeah, so I have more King novels that are at the top of my King reading list. But the more I hear people talk about Firestarter, especially on the King cast, I don't know if you ever listen to that podcast, but
once in a while, and honestly, since COVID, I don't get any podcast or audiobook time like ever anymore. It sucks. But I used to have an hour commute, and that was like 2 hours a day of podcasts, and I used to listen to it then. But so do they love Firestarter?
Yeah, they pump Firestarter, and then they kind of talk about the final act of it, and I was like, man, that does sound amazing. And they, at least once every other episode, will bring up Revival. Have either one of you all read
I love Revival. I love Revival. Yeah.
I read that this year, and oh my God, that the ending of that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's his. I'm going to say that to me, that's got to be his most underrated novel.
Yeah, no one really talks about it.
Oh,
it's so good.
I don't even think we have that. Like my wife, Nick, she can't watch the King movies, but we have an extensive King novel collection. She'll read the books multiple times, but she can't watch movies. Kind of interesting. So, yeah, so all my shelves in like my living room are all King, and Hill is all laid out there. So.
Well, I think there's some, Nick, to what you just said though, Nick, like there was a lot of that with me with King too, is like a lot of the and most of his stuff's been adapted at this point, but a lot of the stuff that had been adapted that I grew up watching, I never read the books because I'm like, I know what happens. So that's definitely like, I didn't read Misery until like 3 or 4 years ago, and I was so mad at myself for not reading. Like, that's one of my favorite books now. Like, how did I not read this book? It was so freaking good. And Firestarter, I didn't read till a couple years ago either. And same thing. I'm like, this book's freaking awesome. Yeah, the final act is just so good. And the whole thing, I loved everything about that book. And down to the, there's actually a handful, a good chunk of the book where they spend time in Bradford, New Hampshire, Joel, hiding out.
That's 20 minutes up the road.
I lived there for a bit before I met my wife. So it was cool. Like, obviously just like, oh yeah. But geographically he was a bit off in some of the stuff he was explaining, like basically that Vermont was like right over the river.
Well, in those terms, it kind of is, John, right? 40 minutes is just over the river out here.
Yeah. Well, right. He made it sound like it was right over the bridge, basically, like walking,
That's how we talk. Yeah, it's down the road. 40 minutes.
Yeah. But yeah, anyways, I love Firestarter. I love Misery. The Shining. Like, I'm one of those people that, like, The Shining is my favorite book of all time. I put it up there with that and Swan Song. Like, I love Swan Song, but The Shining book I didn't read forever, and I loved the movie. And then when I found out King hated the movie, I'm like,
yeah,
why? And I read the book, and I'm like, holy crap! Like, this is so good. I still love the movie, but he hated the movie.
I'm one of those people. I can love both of them equally.
Yeah.
There are a handful of books that terrified me. Shining was one of them. The Exorcist, definitely.
I still haven't read that book, by the way. I gotta.
And Pet Sematary, and I'll say Pet Sematary is my favorite King book.
Yeah,
definitely.
I'd say top 4 books. Exorcist #1, and then I'd have to throw Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian at 2. American Psycho, and then Pet Sematary.
Nice.
So
yeah, those are going to the island with you, right? When they say what 4 books would you to the island? Those are the ones, yeah, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I would have The Shining and Swan Song like I would grab those two in a fire, before I grab my family photos. No, I'm kidding. But I just buy a new one. But no, like yeah, those are my top two. But yeah, I don't know. I never got into the Dark Tower series too much. I read the first 3 books. I did like the second and third book quite a bit, but it was so much of an undertaking. And then people, when I tell them that, they're like, "That's where you stop? Like that's where it like really gets good? Like what are you doing?" But
I think I had the exact same experience. I loved Gunslinger because everyone had bashed it, and I loved it. I thought it was awesome. And then I got to Drawing of the Three, and I thought, yeah, this is pretty good. It's picking up. And then is Wastelands.
Wastelands, yeah.
I was like, all right, this is full blown action blockbuster. It was awesome. And then I kind of just it went downhill for me, and I think I stopped at Wolves of the Kala. And I know how it ends, and I think if I didn't know how it ended, I would have pushed forward. But yeah, sorry, I bailed on the Dark Tower journey.
I hate admitting that to people because everyone's but like I have a Joshua Marcella is another horror author, and he loves the Dark Tower series, and he's like, you stopped at book 3. I'm like, man, like they get bigger and bigger each time, and like I just wasn't like, I don't know, like something wasn't doing it for me. There was a lot of good stuff to it. I can still remember some of the scenes that I thought were awesome in my head from those first couple books, but
I guess we're kicked out of the quartet.
Yeah. But yeah. So when you talk about some King books you haven't read, like I probably won't even go back to them, to be honest. I don't see myself ever doing it. I mean, never say never, I guess. But
with as personal as they are with King, I would, hope the day never comes when King's no longer with us and contributing. But I would probably go back and just to get some more insight into him as an author, because he always talks about those as being his crowning achievement.
Yeah. So, I know, it makes me, that's what I'm saying. It makes me feel bad that I'm like my favorite author is like, I mean, he's pretty much any horror author's favorite author, I guess. But
that's my wife, John. She likes the Dark Tower. That's her favorite. So.
I told Brian Keene that I credit Brian Keene for making me adapt away from Stephen King, because I was a King snob like through high school, and like I didn't read Dean Koontz. I still don't really like his stuff that much, to be honest. But like I didn't read anything but Stephen King until college, when I walked into the bookstore and I picked up The Rising, and I'm like, I'm not really a zombie guy, but I'll check this out, and I loved it. And him and King are definitely different, levels, I'd say, but like I still liked it, and it made me realize I could like other horror authors, and then so I read some of his other stuff, and then I started seeing him when I got on Twitter, like, pumping up some of these other authors. So I started checking them out, and now I'm like, have all these authors with back catalogs that I'm trying to like read while still reading new stuff, and I'm like never gonna catch up. But
I think the book The Ruins was my stepping stone off of the King path, and then I found Books of Blood by Clive Barker and was blown away.
I've never read Clive Barker. I really should. I know.
So the Books of Blood, I would say are the greatest, my favorite collection of short stories. I mean, they are so original. Each one of them, they're so unapologetic. And that's one thing that I took into my first novel. I said, I'm going, balls to the wall with this. I'm not going to hold anything back. I'm going to be unapologetic if the scene calls for it, if it's true to the characters. And I picked that up from Books of Blood. But Jack Ketchum, love his stuff.
Yeah, his stuff's awesome. So I guess in a way, because I always never thought I was an extreme horror guy, or splatterpunk or whatever. And when I read Jack Ketchum stuff, I was really into it. And then I read some Brian Smith stuff, like Depraved, and I'm like, that was wild, And then I read, so I don't know if you've read Daniel Volpe's stuff yet, but like his Left to You book, I told you blew up in the Books of Horror group, and I kept seeing the cover, and then I was reading the synopsis, and it's another book involving a demon, but a good chunk of that book takes place during the Holocaust, and I read that book in January, and I said, this is going to be my favorite book of the year. Like, I just know, like, it was so good. So then I checked his back catalog, and he is an extreme horror author. This was his least extreme. I mean, it's extreme, but it wasn't built that way. You know, it wasn't promoted like that. So then I read Only Psychos, which is the last novella he came out with. And it's, to your point, you know, when you say you went into your first book, you know, just ready to not care, right? Just to go as dark as you had to go. Like, he writes some dark shit. So I would check him out. I mean, he's got some good stuff. But Left to You, like, that book was really good. And you know, when I was reading your book, because I told you my book coming out next month is self-promotion, it's involves you know, a demon in a way too, and when I was reading your book, like, some of the parallels, you know, comparing certain things, I'm like, this is kind of cool, like reading another book that involves that sort of thing. And Left to You, I'm sure if you read that, you know, be thinking the same thing. It's completely different from your book or my book, but you know, there's some things obviously, you know, thematically that are there, but yeah. So
Left to You and Lamageddon, I'm taking those away.
Those are, oh my God. Yeah, those are different ends of the spectrum for sure. Left to You is so it's written in 3 parts, and like the first part introduces the main character and how I'm not going to spoil the whole book for you, you know, but like, he knows this old guy, and the whole second part of the book, like the middle of it, is all Holocaust. Like, it's the old guy back in the Holocaust and the stuff he dealt with, and then the final third of the book is back to modern time, and just it all comes together so nice. So it's cool. But yeah, so we're at almost a 90-minute mark. When I feel myself rambling, I feel like it's usually a good time to throw in the towel, but I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to what we've talked about, you know, in regards to Exorcist House or anything coming up.
Yeah, check out the Exorcist House. It's something I worked very hard on. I'm very proud of it, and I hope it entertains you. I hope, my goal was to have realistic characters that the reader would care about. So when the creepy stuff did happen, you didn't want it to happen to these people. And you know, I kind of fell in love with these characters as I was writing it. You know, the more I wrote, the less my voice was in it. It was like I was just watching this movie in my head and dictating it as I was watching it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope people are entertained. My goal is to have a thrill ride, be entertained, scary, and yeah, hope people enjoy it.
Yeah, well, I did, and I know the early reviews are agreeing. So I think you nailed it. And you know, again, go pick this up, guys. Are you doing?
Put it back
Oh,
there.
sorry. Are you doing signed copies through your website or anything, or?
Yeah, so I ordered 100 copies from the publisher, and it's because of Amazon shipping it. It's been a little bit of a delay, but yeah, all of those, but about 15 are sold. I'm just waiting on them to get to my house so I can mail them out.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm going to be doing some signings coming up. So yeah, I'll be ordering more and keeping my website updated with inventory, because right now it's kind of dwindling on the signed copies. But as always, you can get the paperbacks from Amazon, ebook on Amazon.
Yeah, cool. Well, go get it, guys. It's awesome. Like I said, it hit every spot I wanted it to. There's, like you said, the characters are all awesome. So, they have flaws, which obviously any good character is going to have their flaws. And there were certain flaws that I hope came up later in the book, and they did. So, that's the stuff that obviously you want to see, right? So, I agree. The characters are great. There's some genuinely creepy ass scenes in this book. So, check it out. So.
Awesome.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Great. Well,
thanks for coming on.
Nice to connect with you tonight, Nick. I appreciate your time, and thanks for joining us. And anything else you got going on, we tend to adopt the people we have on the show. So always hit us up. Love to have you back on, and love to chat about what you're working on. So got big plans for you. So
maybe next time I'll be able to join you in a cigar.
Or come up to New Hampshire. We'll get together. It could be cool too. So let's do that. So,
that's on my to-do list. My wife and I want to come and check out the Northeast, do the whole Salem stuff. So we definitely want to head that way sometime soon.
Yeah, nice. Let us know what town. We'll get together, man. It'd be awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, have a good weekend. Thanks for your time tonight, and we'll catch you next time.